Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today, February 4th, 2016, for the Harvard Alumni Association webinar, LinkedIn, Maximizing Your Profile. Matthew Temple will be leading our program today. Matthew is the Director of Alumni Career and Professional Development for the Kellogg School of Management, where he manages a team of people who deliver career and executive coaching, workshops, and webinars to 50,000 alumni globally. He has coached executives in many industries, including consulting, entertainment and media, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, and technology. His areas of focus include leadership, building and managing high-performing teams, onboarding, communications, and executive presence. Previously, Matthew worked in private equity and M&A for Credit Suisse and in corporate finance for Deutsche Bank. He has lived and worked in Hong Kong and London. Matthew holds a BA in European History from Harvard College and an MBA in Finance, Marketing, and Organizational Behavior from Kellogg School of Management. Before I hand the mic over to Matthew, I'll cover a short bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email with a link to it next week. All webinar attendees are muted, and we encourage you to submit questions to use the Q&A function on the webinar screen. You can find this functionality at the top of your screen. Following this webinar, you will receive a brief survey, and we hope that you'll take a moment to let us know how we're doing. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience while we work through a couple technical items to launch this for you. But we'll be handing this over to Matthew in just a moment. Thank you.
So our presentation today is LinkedIn Maximizing Your Profile, and we're just sharing it right now. Let's see if this works. It should be coming up right now. Okay. So what we want to do today is just to get you more comfortable with using LinkedIn. And for some of you that are beginners, this is to kind of get you more comfortable and move from kind of that beginner stage to that intermediate stage. And if you're intermediate, it may just be to show you a couple of tricks to learn. I've got a PowerPoint that we're going to go through for the first maybe 20 minutes or so. And then we're actually going to go online and look at some examples to get you more comfortable with LinkedIn. So we'll also help you to think about how do you connect with people, how do you get noticed on LinkedIn, how do you think about joining groups, following companies, and finding and applying for jobs. A brief overview of LinkedIn. There's over 400 million LinkedIn members in 200 countries, and 3 million companies are on LinkedIn as well. It's the most common channel for recruiters to find talent, particularly experienced talent. Over 90 of the Fortune 100 companies have licensed LinkedIn to help find and track potential candidates. And as people who are using LinkedIn, I want you to think about how it can help you turn cold calls into warm calls. And it's a great resource whether you're a job seeker, whether you're a networker, whether you're in sales, whether you're recruiting, especially for recruiting actually, and for managers, hiring managers as well. So one of the first things you want to think about within LinkedIn is developing a strong keyword-aware headline. For many people on LinkedIn, their keyword-aware headline is really going to be their job title. So it might be title and company. So I'm a partner and managing director at the Boston Consulting Group, or I'm a vice president with Morgan Stanley. And we'll look at a couple of examples here. So President of the United States is a pretty nice title, and I think we've got a couple people trying to get that title right now. But again, the title kind of speaks for itself, the leader of the free world. So we'll look here at another, Richard Branson, so founder of Virgin Group. So with people like Richard Branson or with President Obama, it's very straightforward in terms of how you want people to identify you. But for some people out there, it may not be as easy to be defined by a title. You might be a multi-hyphenate, like J-Lo, for instance. So if you've done more than one thing, you may want to incorporate some keywords into that keyword-aware headline. So for instance, I'm a brand manager with 5 years in startups and Fortune 500 companies, because maybe I want to highlight both my Fortune 500 experience and my startup experience. Or the bottom bullet point, someone who's in talent optimization, leadership and career coach, author, professional speaker, blogger, media guest. So it's really up to you. You want to position yourself as strongly as possible, so it doesn't necessarily have to limit yourself to just a title within your headline. Another important thing to be doing on LinkedIn is uploading a photo to your bio. You are actually 7 to 10 times more likely to be contacted by a recruiter with a photo than without. And so these facts are actually from LinkedIn. You're required to have less than 4 megapixels in your picture. If you're not sure how to do that and your file is too big, you may want to turn to your 8-year-old household CTO, who can usually help with this. And you want it to be professional looking. This isn't Facebook, so you're going to look, you may look a little bit more formal. I think the most important thing to remember, though, is you essentially want to dress to match your audience. If you're in a more formal industry, like banking, it may be a suit and tie. If you're in the startup world, it may be a jacket and a nice shirt. And so really think about who your audience is. And often a good rule of thumb is, you may want to dress up half a step better than what might be normal. A lot of times at some career fairs, they may even have people taking headshots as a way to kind of get you more comfortable with that. And again, if you upload a photo and you don't like it, you can always replace it as well. And I think people have gotten much better about this. If I looked at LinkedIn profiles several years ago, often a third of the people wouldn't have a photo uploaded, and today I usually sort of see about 90-95% will have that photo uploaded. And you can actually put in a background photo now, very similar to Facebook, and I think LinkedIn added that functionality probably within the last year, and that can be nice as well. Your summary. Your summary is going to be another really important part within LinkedIn. And think of your summary as it could be very similar to the summary that you might have on your resume or to a bio or to an elevator pitch. And so, what I really want you to think about is when you communicate about yourself, it's essentially a consistent story that might be on different platforms, whether it's your LinkedIn summary, your resume, your bio, your elevator pitch. When you're thinking about creating that, big questions you want to ask is, who is your audience and what do they want? That's going to help determine what you want to include in your summary and what you may not want to include. For some people that have done a couple of different things, what's really nice about the summary is you can really connect the dots. Let's say you've worked in different industries or different functions or different countries. You might use your summary to connect those dots and tell a story. The nice thing about the summary is you're not hemmed in by chronology. When you look at the experience section within LinkedIn, you're very much delineated by years of time at a particular job. And in the summary, it's much more free-flowing. For some people, they may want to tell a story, and they may want to show passion. So let's say someone who is an entrepreneur or a nonprofit, that passion may be very important within the summary. For people who might be in more traditional occupations, that passion may not be as critical. You'll also want to include keywords, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, but keywords become very critical within LinkedIn because of the search functionality, and so many people that are looking to, let's say, recruit someone to a particular job or maybe even for a speaking engagement, they will primarily do searches looking at keywords, and you want to make sure that your profile comes up so it has the right keywords. Skills and expertise. Again, it's going to be important what you include and what you get endorsed for. And so you want to make sure that your skills and expertise match your industry or target. You want to use the same language and skills, essentially, of your target industry or function. I think you can often get very good ideas about this by looking at other profiles. And think through what would someone in your industry have for their skills and expertise, and also even for their keywords. So, for instance, an investment banker might list, I've worked on IPOs, on initial public offerings, I've conducted due diligence, I've negotiated deal structure, valuation skills, discounted cash flows. Brand managers may want things like new product development, managed product life cycles, conducted market research, managed agencies. So often very good sources when you're trying to figure out skills and expertise or even keywords. Look at other people's profiles within your industry or function. Another really good source is just look at job listings, because typically in job listings, I'll often have people put 10 or 12 job listings into a Word document and start looking at what are some of the universal skills and expertise or requirements that come up within those job descriptions. And the other thing we wanted to say is if you have questions during the webinar, please don't hesitate to type them into the Q&A box at the very top of your page. Customizing your URL is also going to be very important within LinkedIn. Typically, when you register for LinkedIn, you'll have, the URL might be linkedin.com and then a series of numbers and letters. And you can actually customize that by putting in your name. If your name is taken, so when I tried to customize mine to Matthew Temple, someone else had beaten me to the punch, so I was Matthew Temple 2. But it was better than the original. But you can customize your URL, and what's nice about that, you can include it in your signature and networking emails. Sometimes if you're networking and you're reaching out and you're connecting to people, it may be a little too abrupt or in your face to send them a resume, but having that link to your LinkedIn profile is a much more subtle way of just giving them the relevant information they're going to need. And they're probably going to look you up anyways, so why not make it easier for people to look you up and to find you and even to connect with you. You also want to check at some point, does your LinkedIn profile come up in a Google search? And when you look again at that URL, you might want to include it in a resume, a blog, a website. So think of it essentially as a way to enhance your networking. The experience section within LinkedIn. Title is okay, but again, it may not always be enough. And by title, I mean just the title of a particular job that you've had. Some people may want to keep it very high level and just have their title, the company name, and the years they were there. But you can put in more detail if you want. You can list accomplishments and results I think are going to be important, including data like, dollar impact. So some people might want to say, I handled a P&L of $2 million, or I managed a budget of $100,000, or we had cost savings of $50,000. Those will jump off the page, very similar to a resume, or you might want to think about numbers. I managed a team of 10 people, or I wrote a training manual, a 100-page training manual used by 5,000 new starts a year. You can really see the impact of that, how many people might have used it. Percentages as well can be very impactful. So we increased efficiency by 20%, or we cut turnaround time by 15%. That can be impactful. And finally, think about brand names within your experience section. And you want to think about brand names in multiple ways. So one brand name category can be education. So Harvard University is a pretty good brand name. So that may be something you want to leverage within the education section. Brand names can also be companies that you've worked for. So maybe you work for Facebook or Google. Those are going to be brand names. But think about brand names in other ways. Maybe you're at a startup and it's still a small startup, it's 15 people and 2 people have heard of your company. You can still leverage brand names because maybe your clients included Ford, Toyota, and General Motors. So even though I may not have heard of your startup, it must be pretty compelling that those are some initial clients or customers. For some people, it might be channels. So again, maybe you make a product. I'm not familiar with the product, but you sell it in channels like Walmart, Costco, and Target. That's going to be very impactful. Also think about platforms. So maybe you make an app. The app isn't a household name, but it's available on iPhone, Android. That's going to be helpful as well. And even think about partnerships. So, we've got partnerships with Disney, Fox, Time Warner. Those are also going to be brand names. Listing your last 2 roles will make you 12 times more likely to be contacted by a recruiter. And again, that stat comes from LinkedIn. Some of the questions that I'll sometimes get about the experience section is, should it be the same as my resume? And many people leave it the same. You don't have to. It's really up to you. So you can keep it briefer. They still may ask for a resume, but you want to put enough information there that it's going to be impactful. If you're in certain industries, let's say you were a management consultant, and a lot of data in terms of dollar amount, client names, those are going to be confidential, and you want to maintain that same confidentiality, especially on LinkedIn, where many other people can see your profile. Other information to include, and again, this would be more interesting when we go online and look at some LinkedIn profiles. So education, listing schools, and you can omit dates. I'm older than Methuselah right now. I do not have my dates of graduation in my education section, and so don't feel that you need to put dates in there. One other really interesting thing is you can change the order of how your schools are listed, and the reason that I bring that up is when I was still a novice to LinkedIn, someone told me that I might want to change the order of my schools because the only one that was showing up was my high school. It hadn't really showed that I'd gone to college and graduate school, and so you can flip the order around to change that. Languages are going to be very important in some regions, and in fact, for some people, they're going to be filters in searches. So this is actually a true example. It was in a Fortune article about LinkedIn. Unilever was actually looking to recruit people, and so they were looking for Chinese nationals that were getting postgraduate degrees in molecular food science at an American university to staff a Shanghai R&D facility. So it would have been very important for the person to say, I'm fluent in Putonghua or in Mandarin so that they would come up in a search like that. You also didn't have the ability to put your profile into another language. LinkedIn has a number of languages that you can do this in, and so that can be very relevant if you're looking for a job in a different country. Certifications are going to be important as well. So if you had a CFA or a CPA or a PMP, that's good to put in as well. It's going to show that you've got a lot of expertise in a particular area. Volunteer experience is also going to be important. It's a great way to gain new skills like social media. And again, volunteer experience can really help connect you with people and really be a great icebreaker. So that can be a great thing to include in your profile. It can also be very helpful for people who might be re-entering the workforce. That volunteer experience can be a great way to segue back into the workforce. Finally, LinkedIn is, and it's really interesting, they've really grown the functionality quite a bit the last couple of years, partly through buying companies like lynda.com, but they've also really grown the functionality in terms of allowing people to showcase their portfolio, whether that might be a white paper or publication, whether that might be a PowerPoint, whether it might be a video. You can link and show your Twitter feed within LinkedIn. So take advantage of that. It's actually made it much, much more powerful. Recommendation. So recommendations on LinkedIn, I think they're very helpful, but it's never going to replace a formal reference. But I think it's very helpful to have, and I'll show you a little bit about recommendations in a bit. It's going to be helpful as you're getting recommendations to reach out to colleagues, managers, peers, direct reports, classmates, boards, associations. And also think about clients and channel partners. Actually, one of I think the most powerful recommendations to get might be from a client or a customer, because you normally will have recommendations inside your company, but that can really speak to the level of service that you provided. Be specific about what you want the recommendation to focus on, what skills or experiences or projects. When you send someone a request for a recommendation, again, it may be helpful to remind them, can you talk about the project that I finished up 6 months ago where we increased viewership by 500,000 people and cut the budget by XYZ. So you may want to remind them. The other thing as well is build this before you need it. People get very busy and they may forget. So, try to get in the habit of asking for that recommendation as you're finishing up the project while it's fresh in their mind, because those details might be forgotten a year or 2 years down the road. Finally, be sure to accept the recommendation. They'll write the recommendation, but it doesn't go on your website until you accept it. So if you didn't like the recommendation, you don't have to accept it. But it doesn't actually go on to your profile until you actually accept it. Connecting with others. You really want to think through what is it you want your strategy to be. So there's the initial, LION, L-I-O-N, so I'm a LinkedIn Open Networker, so that may be someone who wants to really connect very, very broadly, or it might be very narrow. One thing LinkedIn does, which I actually like, is they don't really list the number of connections once you hit 500, so you don't have people in a contest trying to get more. It is nice if you can get to 500, and again, it's really up to you. Who do you decide to connect to, who you don't? So I have a team of coaches that work at Kellogg, Some will only really connect with people that they know very closely. Others may not. It's really up to you. When connecting, I like people to personalize their connection message as much as possible versus just the default. So the default tends to be, hi, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn. Sounds very warm, very fuzzy. So, I guess if you work with a person and you know them every day, I think it's okay to use that default. They know you, it's fine. But let's say it's someone you just met. Maybe you just met at a global networking night at Harvard, for instance, and you want to connect. You may want to remind them. They may not have remembered, so it could be very subtle. I met you at the GNN in January, and we talked about investing in Malaysia. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So again, it's really short. It's a sentence or two, but you just may want to remind them of it. The closer you can connect immediately after an event, the better. If you're just new to LinkedIn, often a good way to start thinking about connections is you can have LinkedIn look through your email contacts within Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, and give you a series of suggested people to connect with. That can be a great way when you're just joining LinkedIn. Think about reaching out to current colleagues, previous colleagues, friends, classmates, professors, neighbors. And then LinkedIn will also suggest contacts. So if you've been using LinkedIn for a while, I think this could be a great way to just say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that we weren't connected. We worked together. I want to connect with that person as well. Joining groups. It's actually one of the most powerful things you can do in LinkedIn. And what's interesting is there's been some changes to the group function within LinkedIn. They made these changes in October. You can now join up to 100 groups. The limit used to be 50. There's no more subgroups. You can, what's nice about groups is you can join discussions and connect with people, and then be strategic about what groups you want to join. Large groups are great. They may have more discussions, more robust discussions, but sometimes closed groups can be great as well. It may be a tighter group. It may be an unlisted group. But those are just the people you want to connect with. The Harvard Alumni Network is 10,000. We just looked this up, 10,521. We had 11 more people join since the last time I put the number in yesterday. And then that's a great group. So if you have a degree from Harvard, that's a great group to join and connect with people, and it is an official Harvard group. And there's also groups for schools and classes. So there could be, a group just for the business school or just for the law school or just for the club in your city as well. So there may be multiple groups within Harvard class. It could be the class of 86 group that you want to join. When you think about Harvard within LinkedIn, you can think of it as a school or university, as a group, or as an organization or company you might work for. So it'll come up in different listings, and I'll show that. And again, one of the powerful things about groups, I had one client who joined a really interesting group discussion, and in the group discussion, she was able to showcase her expertise. She ended up getting a consulting opportunity by showing her expertise within a group discussion. And finally, think about alumni groups very broadly. When we think of alumni, we tend to really focus in on universities and schools, but many companies have alumni groups within LinkedIn. So I worked at Credit Suisse. There's a Credit Suisse alumni group within LinkedIn as well. And again, discussions are great. Within the groups, members are sorted by relevance. So typically the people in the group are going to come up first are the first connections, so you're directly connected to them. Second degree connections will be next, and then third degree. Sometimes you'll see jobs posted within groups. And so again, joining that group, you might find some interesting opportunities that come up. Some groups now are unlisted and may not even be searchable in public profiles. Getting noticed. This is also very important within LinkedIn. Updating your profile, so maybe you have a new promotion or a new job, or you just gained a certification. So you may want to add that to your profile. One thing that's important when you're updating your profile, let's say you were starting a job search and you didn't want your current company to know, and you were going to spend, a couple days on LinkedIn really updating your profile. One of the things that you may want to consider is you can turn off the notification function so that no one in your network is notified that you're making changes. Let's say I'm going to make 30, 40 changes to my profile over the next 3 days. It's kind of an ad like, okay, I'm looking for a job right now, and I may not want my employer to know that. You can turn the toggle off on that functionality. And then sometimes what you may want to do is right before you're ready to make the last change, you may want to turn it on, and then your network is going to be notified that you just made a change rather than 40 changes. You can maximize your public profile by using keywords. Status updates are great, so very, very similar to Facebook. Maybe you're at an interesting conference, read a book, appeared as a panelist, and I'll show you a little bit how to do a status update. And again, participating in group discussions is a great way to show expertise. The other thing is trying to keep your profile as open as possible to connect with recruiters, peers, and alumni. And what I mean by that is you have control over how much of your profile is accessible to the public, even when you're not connected with them. I tend to be a big advocate of keeping your profile as open as possible, but it's completely your decision, and I'll show you a little bit about how to do that. Following companies, there are over 3 million companies on LinkedIn, so it's a great way to stay current about new products, new news announcements with companies. And you can look at companies without following them. You don't have to follow them, but typically if you go to a company page, there's a little yellow button in the right-hand corner that says follow. It's that easy. Great way to find out about jobs, great way to prepare for meetings or interviews coming up. Applying for jobs, you can use LinkedIn as a way to network into the company. And again, I think this is one of the most powerful things. It's fine to send a resume and a cover letter to someone, but it feels like it's going out there in cyberspace and no one's ever going to see it. But then use LinkedIn as a way to say, okay, is there anyone from my various networks that might be in this company that I can reach out to? What's also sometimes helpful, let's say you were interested in a company, is you can also look and find and reach people who used to work at the company. And sometimes where that can be very helpful is they may be the most candid about the company, saying, here's the really strong points, here's some of the negative points, here's what you have to think about. So you can do searches within the advanced search functionality in LinkedIn. I'm looking for someone who used to work at this company, can be helpful. You can also apply for positions. You can sometimes reach out to recruiters. Some companies really leveraged LinkedIn very heavily to list jobs. I see tech companies quite a bit. Sometimes Facebook or Google might have a couple thousand jobs on LinkedIn. Some of the other great functionalities of this is they'll actually look at other jobs within the company, so a great way to highlight other jobs, or look at similar jobs at other companies. And so it's a great way to kind of think about what else is out there. Advanced search, again, very, very helpful within LinkedIn. You could start with a company name like Google and Vice President and use that as a way to search for someone within Google. Or again, searching for people at Google, current or past. Those past people can be great when you're starting to do some research on a company or network in. Or you can search for someone whose current company is Google but used to work at McKinsey. So maybe I'm at McKinsey now, I'm thinking about working at Google. I can actually search and find people just like that and just say, well, how did you position yourself when you were making the transition from McKinsey to Google? If you want to do more elaborate search, where you want to look at years of experience, seniority level, you may need to pay up to get a premium service. I'm usually not a big fan of that. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And finally, the last slide I want to touch on before we go online is just thinking about that search functionality. So Boolean searches is a way to do tighter searches. And so what you can do there is you can put things in quotation marks to look for an exact phrase. So I'm looking for a product manager in quotes. So it's got to be the two words together just like that. Or sometimes you can use the word not in all capitals. So I'm looking for a programmer, not manager. Or, as well, if I want to look for multiple things. So I was doing a search recently at a company and I was looking for people at that C level. So I might put CEO in quotes or in capitals, CFO in quotes or in capitals, COO, because I'm trying to reach out to C-level people. You can also use and within searches, and then finally parentheticals. So this is probably getting a little deeper than we wanted, but you can just Google Boolean searches. And again, I think a lot of people don't take advantage of that functionality within LinkedIn. So what we're going to do right now is let me see if I can sign into my LinkedIn account here. All right, I'm kicking you off here, Amanda. Let's see. This here. Okay, here we are. So a couple of things to start with. Let's start first. We talked a little bit about public profile. So if we go over here, so you click on the photo, and under accounts and settings, if you go down to privacy and settings, and you click on manage here, it'll give you several different things that you can change. So one of them that comes up on the right side here going down is edit your public profile. So this is what do people who you're not connected with see. And so I'm a big advocate of showing everything. So for me, they'll see my picture, my headline, summary, current positions, past positions, skills, education, everything. And so on the left side, you can actually see what they see. So if you did a search for me right now on LinkedIn, this is what you'd see. And I'm a big advocate. I may find clients this way. Maybe I'll get a job offer. Maybe I'll get consulting opportunities. But you really get to decide what you show, what you don't show. Over here, if you wanted to change your URL, we talked about personalizing it. It's right here. You hit the edit function. So again, someone grabbed Matthew Temple. I've got to find that person. So I'm Matthew Temple too. But you could always change that down the road. So managing your custom public profile is a very good thing to think about within LinkedIn. Another thing to think about, we talked about recommendations. So if you go over here to manage your recommendations, so you can see these are recommendations that I received, recommendations that I've given to people. So you can see if I wanted to retract something, I could just click the remove button there and remove the recommendation. I can ask for a recommendation. So let's say I wanted to ask someone for a recommendation. What do I want to be recommended for? So LinkedIn will look at what role you're in. So maybe I was a student at Harvard University. I click down there, and then I can type in a connection name. Who do you want to ask? And then you can also personalize that message. Could you recommend, did that great senior's thesis on Anglo-American relations over Ireland? So you can ask for a specific recommendation as well. And again, I think the more that you can guide them, the better. One of the other things we talked about was, let's say you were making a lot of changes to your profile within LinkedIn and you didn't want everyone in your network to know that you were making a lot of changes. So over here, select, choose whether or not to share your profile edits. So you just click right there. So right now, if you wanted to let people know when you change your profile, make recommendations, or follow company. So right now, I'm not letting my network know. If I did, I just click on the box, and I would just, hit save instead of cancel. So one of the things that would be interesting is the status update function. And so if we go over here to home, so this is sort of be the home page. So here's where you can do share an update or upload a photo. So if I go right now to upload a photo, and actually I don't have it on this computer, so I can't. So I won't upload a photo. It's on my other one. But there was a nice photo of Harvard. I'll see if I can pull it up. Well, actually, we'll just skip it for now. So let me just do the status update without the photo. So I can say right now, I'm thrilled to be, let's say, presenting, since I can't really type that well under pressure, apparently, our first career webinar to Harvard alumni on LinkedIn, and I can share that right now with my network. So that'll go out to the network, and so you can say I'm gonna like that. You can comment on it. You can share it as well. I'll try to update it later with the photo. There was a nice photo of Elliott House that you can update it with as well. So the status update function, what's really nice about it, maybe you're at a really interesting conference and you wanted to let your audience know about that. In fact, what I can show you here is I can show you a couple updates that I have. So if I go into the update section, I was doing a workshop in Boston last night on Myers-Briggs. So he talked about the Myers-Briggs workshop, and then Stephen Colbert had a hilarious bit he did on Myers-Briggs a few weeks ago. So I actually uploaded a link to the video on YouTube with Colbert talking about the MBTI. Or we've got some workshops coming up in Portland. So if alumni are interested, we've got a LinkedIn workshop in Portland. I can share that with my group as well. We've got one in Seattle. We have something here for the LinkedIn profile today. So that can be a great way to just keep your network up to date with what's going on. We also talked about joining groups within LinkedIn. And sometimes, you want to think about, well, how will I even find what groups to join? So often what I'll tell people is look at people within your industry and see what groups they're in. So Simon is someone I'm connected with who's an executive recruiter in London. He was on a panel that I moderated there a couple years ago. So if I look down in his profile, and let's go down, you can see what groups he's in. So he focuses on financial services, so he's in a capital markets M&A group. He's in the strategic CFO group. He's in a global mergers and acquisitions group. You just have to click the join button here to join the group. He's in a global private equity group. So you can click here to see more of the groups that he's in. And so again, you're allowed to join now up to 100 groups. Take advantage of it. One thing to think about if you've got let's say a hard to spell name or a commonly misspelled name is you may want to add different spellings of your name as a way to signal people. So Lindsay Pollock is someone I'm connected with who's phenomenal expert on millennials in the workplace and on LinkedIn. I always misspell Lindsay's name. Sometimes I think it's with a Y instead of an I as a second letter. Sometimes I add a C to her last name. She's done something really smart. If you look down over here, she actually lists alternative spellings because you might spell her name differently. And so again, coming back to that keyword functionality of LinkedIn, you can misspell her name and yet she will still come up in the search because she's listed. So I thought that was a very, very smart thing to do, even for someone who went to Yale. Harvard Alumni Network is a great network. So let's say you wanted to join the Harvard Alumni Network. So if I start typing in here, you'll actually see that it starts suggesting groups, people, companies. If I click down here to it's Harvard University Alumni. I think I wanted Harvard University Alumni. So I click in here. This is the unlisted, so I've got to get the Harvard Alumni Network. I think it was a different one. Let me type it in here. Harvard Alumni. Here we go. Harvard Alumni Network. So this is the official group of the university. So we're now up to 10,522 members. So I'm a member. You can click to join, and then you can start a conversation with the group. So Amanda King is talking about maximizing your chances of being found on LinkedIn. She's here right next to me, but you can look at different discussions. What do you think of Sanders? His storytelling is superb. So very interesting discussions that you can get into with fellow alumni. Another thing that's very, very powerful within LinkedIn, and this was really a game changer when they introduced it about a year and a half ago. If you go up to My Network and you click down to the bottom one that says Find Alumni, you can look for different universities. So I'm going to choose Harvard here as the university. And remember, it can also do this on schools within the greater universities. You could pick Harvard University at that parent level, or you can focus on HBS or the law school or the Kennedy School. So I'm going to pick the university. And so what's interesting here is you'll get 180,000 people here. And if you click here on students and alumni, and so what's great here is they break up the network into different things. You can look at it geographically. Where do they live? Where do they work? What do they do? You can also show more, so you can go deeper here. So what's interesting is, let's do an example. Let's say I am, what do we say I'm in Boston, which is where I am today. So I can click here on Boston. I'll go from 146,000 alumni to 25,000 right away, and I can further filter that. And then when I go down, I'll see people that I'm connected with in Boston. So Erin Mackey is an alum and works at HAA, or Hannah Cardiel is an initiative leader with me, or Mac Joshi is someone I found last night at a workshop who's an alum. Chris Farley as well as someone I'm connected to. So what can be great about that is, let's say you're going to be in Boston for a couple days. You may just want to check out alumni that you're connected with, and it's a great reminder, oh, I should reach out to so-and-so and catch up with them for lunch. So I think that's helpful as well. One of the other questions that comes up quite frequently is, should you pay for premium services within LinkedIn? And if we look over here, and again, if we look at sort of accountant basic, so LinkedIn has, and I know a couple of you were asking that question, so I wanted to get to it here. So LinkedIn actually has streamlined this. They now have 4 different accounts that you can have. So you can have the Land Your Dream Job, which is more for people who might be in a job search. Grow and Nurture Your Network. These names sound so harmless. Find and Hire Talent. So if you click here on Select Plan, it'll tell you a little bit more about what you get. You get 3 in-mail credits a month. So that might be helpful, where you can reach out to 3 people that you're not connected with, a 3rd-degree connection, and do that. And so a month is going to be $30 a month. It's a little bit less sometimes if you get an annual contract, but that can be helpful for your landing your dream job. Some of the other premium services cost even more. So for instance, if we go back up here to the previous page we were on, you can unlock sales opportunities, which is going to be closer to $80 a month, $780 a year. Or you can find and hire talent. That's aimed at recruiters. You'll get 30 in-mails a month. 120 a month, 1,200 a year. For the average person using LinkedIn, I don't think the premium services are worthwhile. And one of the purposes of this webinar today is to just get you more comfortable and more facile within LinkedIn. I think most people are probably using only 5%, 10% of the functionality. So I think my recommendation would be use more of the functionality and see if it's doing what you need it to do before you have to pay up for premium services. So why don't we see if we have any questions right now that have come in that people would like us to get to. So any evidence that adding dates for education is a disadvantage or an advantage? So that question comes up a lot. And again, there's different schools of thought on it. One of the questions I get is age discrimination out there. It definitely is. So I tend to be a bigger advocate is if you're further out from undergraduate, let's say you graduated 20 years ago, you may not want to list your date of graduation. If you're a more recent graduate, you may want to. People in the end are going to sort of figure out, how many years experience you have anyways. So if they can't figure it out, do you really want to be working for them in the end? So I don't really worry about that too much. But in general, if a back of the envelope rule might be maybe 20 years out, you may not want to list it. If I am researching a company, does the advanced search functionality enable me to find Harvard alumni currently and previously working at the company? Absolutely. Absolutely, you can do that. So if we go into advanced search here, and we're pulling it up here, so you can search at different companies. So if you look here under, you can look here at current company, and I can add a company here. So let's say there's someone currently at Facebook. I think it probably did take it. Let's see if it added it up on top here. Maybe not, so let's add it in here. Facebook. Okay. And then you can also look at, the location. Are they working in Menlo Park? So what's nice about it here, and then you can put in school over here. So I can search at a school, I can type in Harvard University, and then I can do my search. And so you're seeing 153 results. With the second degree connections, again, this is one of the big advantages, I can connect with them without having to send an in-mail. So I can connect with any of these people, which makes it very helpful. As you go further out, so Cheryl Sandberg and I are third degree connections. I didn't realize Cheryl and I were that close. I'd have to send an in-mail and hopefully try to connect with Cheryl Sandberg. So then if I go to page 2, these are all going to be third connections at that point, where I really would need to send an in-mail to connect with them at that point. But that search functionality within LinkedIn is incredibly powerful. And so, and again, sometimes it's, can I find people currently at the company or someone else who used to work somewhere else? So that past company one can be very helpful. So maybe I used to work at McKinsey. I'm trying to get into Facebook. I may want to do past company McKinsey, current company Facebook, and I might want to even do, did they go to Harvard as well? Another question that came in, what is the etiquette around requesting connections with people you know? I think, again, with people you know, it's okay to request connections, to have them connect you with someone that they might know, I think was the question. I think, again, try to be very straightforward and purposeful about who you want to request the connection with and why. And so I think the more information you can list and why you want to do it can be very, very helpful. And I know we're coming up towards the top of the hour, so I wanted to go back and show a couple more slides on our deck. But keep sending your questions in if you have them. Let's go here. We've got a couple of recruiter tips here that I think will be helpful. And let me see if I can pull up on our, let's see if we can get the screenshot. Is not coming up here. Pull this down here. Okay. So recruiter tip number 1, recruiters perform straightforward keyword functioning. So the more keywords that you can have in your profile, the faster you're going to come up with. So making sure that you list all of your skills and experience is going to be very, very important so people can connect with you. If you're not sure what to list, read a couple of job descriptions for similar positions that you're seeking and make sure you're using the same language and terms that they use as well. Recruiter tip number 2. Recruiters often join industry and skills-based LinkedIn groups and follow their discussions. So again, the example I showed before of finding out what groups particular recruiters are in, you may want to join those similar groups. If you're in that industry, you may want to follow some of those discussions as well. Recruiter tip number 3. Recruiters may follow thought leaders and key influencers. So a significant part of a headhunter's value is to know who's who in his or her specialty field. So the more that you can be a thought leader and follow thought leaders to stay current in your field can be very important as well. Recruiter tip number 4. Sometimes recruiters will look at their connections LinkedIn behavior. So again, if, let's say you haven't turned off your activity feed and you're making 30, 40 changes to your profile over the course of a week, they're probably going to assume that you're in a job search. That may not be bad for the recruiter, but you may not want your colleagues to know that. And then recruiter tip number 5, recruiters are open to working with people who aren't currently in a job. I think there used to be a bigger stigma on that, really not very much at all today. And so even if you're not currently employed, don't let that hold you back from working with or engaging with recruiters. And then just something to think about in terms of daily routines and even weekly routines for LinkedIn. When you think about, and again, I think it's tougher today because we're sort of inundated with social media. How much time should I spend on Twitter versus LinkedIn versus Facebook versus Instagram? I think just developing like a very quick 5-minute or 10-minute LinkedIn routine daily can be helpful. So just reading your inbox and responding to invitations, trying to connect with people in real time. So I was at an event last night. A very good follow-up would be either last night or this morning, sending out some LinkedIn invitations to connect with those people. just following your newsfeed once a day and kind of reading through it, because people might be posting some interesting white papers or interesting conferences coming up. Post a status update, what's happening today. I was at an interesting conference. So that could be like a very quick 5-minute LinkedIn routine. And then you might have a longer 30 or 60-minute weekly LinkedIn routine. So again, status update, or that's where you might say, I really want to strengthen my profile. I'm going to, block out 30 minutes on Saturday, and I'm going to write some bullet points or more accomplishments for what I did for this one job. You may want to get more thoughtful then about who do I actually want to send connection invites to rather than just responding. Or you may want to think about, do I want to ask for a recommendation for this project I just completed? And really the goal of this routine, and essentially the goal of the webinar, is how do we move from being a passive user of LinkedIn, where I just respond to people's invitations, to a more active user of LinkedIn, where I'm posting updates and pushing out invitations. Finally, a couple things before we wrap up. You may have gotten some emails about claiming your Harvard key. And so if you have gotten that email from Harvard Alumni Association, it's a great way to stay connected with the university. It can help connect you with other alumni. It's a great way to augment a lot of the functionality on LinkedIn. And you can also use it as a very easy way to register for Harvard events around the world. So if you get that Harvard key, claim it and use it as a way to register. You can update your profile as well. You can add photos. As we record future webinars like this, you'll be able to use your Harvard key to get in and watch those webinars as well. Finally, our next webinar, and this is our first one, so we're very excited, but our next one will be April 28th, and this is actually going to focus on returning to work after a career break, strategies and success stories. It's going to be presented by Carol Fishman-Cohen. Carol's an HBS alum, and she's also CEO and co-founder of iRelaunch. And iRelaunch is headquartered in the Boston area and helps people who are re-entering the workforce after a career break. They may have taken a career break to have a family or care for a parent. And it's also something that's very helpful even for people that have taken a career break, or maybe they've worked at a startup and now they're going back into the more corporate workforce. Topics are going to include most successful, most critical step to relaunching, benefits of strategic volunteering, updating your skills, what to consider, social media for relaunchers, and stories of real people relaunching their careers. So again, please join us for that. I think we might have time for one last question. Let's see if we have one more here. Is there cachet in hitting 500 connections? It's kind of like baseball and getting 500 home runs. You may not quite make the Hall of Fame, but, I think there is a certain amount. And particularly, let's say you were in a field, let's say you were in sales, or let's say you were an executive recruiter. I might be a little surprised if you didn't have 500 connections. So I think there is a little bit of cachet of doing that. And then the nice thing is once you hit 500, you can really take a breath, you can relax, you kind of hit your 500 limit. That's good. So anyways, I know we're coming up at the top of the hour, so we want to be cognizant that you may have other meetings to run off to. So a couple of things. One, this is being recorded, and we will follow up and send you a link to the recording. So if you could bear to hear my voice again, you can go back and watch through and look at some of the tips. So definitely keep that in mind. Two, you're going to receive a survey just in a second when we finish up. We would love to get your response to the survey. We're trying to think about what other programming would be most helpful for you. So if you could respond and let us know, that can really help us determine what other career and professional development programming would be most helpful for you. And finally, a big, big thank you to Ann Cushing and Amanda King at HAA for making this possible today. Stay connected, and we'll see you soon. Bye.